Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Anastasia Lindsey. She's an author, a poet, and a holistic healing practitioner. She's also a photographer, singer, and artist. Welcome to the show, Anastasia.
Hi, thank you for having me. Very, very happy to be here today.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Anastasia. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll be talking about healing through poetry from you. We'll be talking about all these things and much more. But before we talk about that, let's understand a bit about your journey, your healing, so that people can learn a lot from there itself.
So my name's Anastasia Lindsey. I started my journey, my healing journey, about into 2018. And really, what really helped me the most was channeling my feelings and my thoughts through my poetry. And it allowed me to take everything that was inside of my mind and put it onto paper so that I was not carrying all of that anymore. And it was really therapeutic to know that I wasn't alone in the world. When people read my words, they kind of see that they're not alone as well. And I was able to help them see that, hey, like she's doing this, she's going through her healing. So it's possible for me too. And so that's where really the power of poetry came through. I did use different modalities like meditation and sound healing, but really what showed up the most for me was poetry and was writing. So I continue to use my healing modality through poetry today, and it's something that I will always carry with me. It's just always going to be in my backpack of life and just be along for the ride.
Wonderful, wonderful, Anastasia. And so now, talking about healing through poetry. Why poetry? Means I understand a lot of people understand poetry in their own way, but I want to understand from you for the audience, why did you choose poetry uh, as such?
So I believe that poetry chose me. I actually did not know I was a poet. It wasn't until grade school we had a English assignment to write a poem. It could be about anything. She just wanted us to practice writing poetry. And so I turned in the poem, and her response was, she pulled me off to the side. She's like, I think you're a natural born poet. And that really lit up my internal world. I really felt like I had something that I could take with me and make movement out there in the world. As a child, that was really big. It wasn't until I got older did I see the correlation between healing and poetry and how it met in the middle. And it was changing my world. So then, as this gift of poetry, I was born with it. I started to discover the many healing properties that poetry had for me, not only for myself, but for others. So, when I found out that I could naturally write poetry, I was writing poems for anniversaries and birthdays and celebrations, and to see their reactions, whether it was happy tears or really giant smiles, I had a tangible item that I could hold on to, and those were people's emotions. And I'm like, my words are creating movement like that out in the world. Like there's so much power in that. And so now I really focus on that item is like, wow, poetry has the power to create movement, and it's something that I can visibly see with my two own eyes.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank
Now, Anastasia, I want to understand for general people, how can they utilize poetry for healing, for themselves? A lot of people, when they are into, difficult times, that time their mind does not work, and sometimes, they can go on watching videos on their phones or anywhere else, and less thinking about the poetry part. How would you like to tell them about the power of poetry for their transformation, for their healing?
Yeah, so a lot of people we look towards it's outside resources, poetry is something that you can do yourself, whether it's reading it or practice writing it. And what it does, most importantly, is puts you in the present moment. So you're not thinking about anything else outside of you. It really forces you to look inwards when most of us are looking outwards. So what we want to do with poetry is think about how you're feeling in this present moment. What emotions are you feeling? What are some things that are coming up for you? Focus on your breathing. And as you read a poem, you are focused in this present moment. So we're not supposed to look back in the past. We're not supposed to anticipate the future. We're just supposed to be in this moment. And so that's what poetry does. It sits you down and it allows you to look at what you are thinking. Think about the things that are happening in your body in this moment. And as you read a poem, you can kind of reflect and be like, how did that poem make me feel? Did I feel connected in the world in a way that I've never felt before? Is it bringing in strange sensations that I've never felt before? And then it really allows you to reflect and be like, what's going on with me right now in this moment? And a lot of times people don't give themselves the time or the space to see how they're doing in this exact moment because we're so worried about what's going on outside of us, where poetry forces you to look inside of you.
Absolutely. Poetry, makes you look inside of you. Now, you talk about the waves of human emotions. How
Yes.
human emotions are the one which make you weak in a way, not in a literal sense in that sense, but in a way when it leads to understanding of things differently. Even trauma, people can emotions deep into emotions can sometimes get deep into you, and you may feel that your relationships have become traumatic for you, or in any other way. How should people look at these waves of emotions that can heal them and do not bring any traumatic memories for them? How would you like to tell them?
Yeah, so I always say the waves of human emotions. First, I like to say that a lot of us, we look at some of the human emotions as negative already. No emotion is negative. We want to refrain from saying that. A lot of people will refrain from being angry because we were taught not to be angry. A
Right.
lot of people will refrain from crying or being too emotional because they were taught it's not okay to be emotional. What I want people to first remember is that all of your emotions are valid, how they are and how they come. It is our inability to process our emotions that can be traumatic and toxic, but not the actual processing of the emotion. So for me, I'm highly sensitive. It doesn't take much for me to start crying. But growing up, I looked at that as a very negative quality about myself, but really it was very positive. It's a very highly intuitive gift to be able to cry and process those waves of emotions that come up for me. So I always say allow them to flow. You don't ever want to hold on to them. That's when it gets traumatic or that's when it gets painful, is when that's the only emotion that you allow yourself to carry or hold on to. So if the waves of anger come up for you, process that anger, work through it, and then allow the wave to settle down. Reach the shore, be at calm, be at peace. Because if you hold on to that anger, it creates a lot of hostility within your body. So you don't want to hold on to that. Being angry isn't the problem, it's holding on to the anger that creates that pain, the traumatic memories. Just allow them to surface, process through them, and then let them go gently, just like the waves do. They ultimately settle down, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Anastasia. And now let's talk of vulnerability. When you talk of vulnerability, nowadays it's a very often talked about thing. People talk about it. Earlier, people used to talk about not being vulnerable. Let not people see the vulnerable side of you. Otherwise, they will make, misuse it. Now, in today's time, many times we talk about vulnerability. The dangers of today's world are also still there, but still, many of us propagate about being vulnerable. How do you calibrate both parts of it, being vulnerable, but not being vulnerable to extent that people start misusing it? Or is it that no harm in being as much vulnerable as you want? What is your take on this?
I think I'm right there in the middle. So it takes time and it takes practice, because being vulnerable isn't easy to do, first of all. So it is going to take time for people to just be open and vulnerable. Even as a poet myself, it still takes me time. And actually,
Right.
with my book Ocean, the very first poem in my book, I went back and forth on whether I wanted to add it in my book or not. I was like a ping pong ball. Like, do I add it? Do I be vulnerable? No, I'm going to take it out. And I went back and forth internally. But I told myself, I'm on this journey to being vulnerable to show people that it's safe. So I need to show people that it's safe to do so. And I trusted my gut. I trusted what I was feeling and thinking. And so I put that poem in the book and made it the very first page. And one of the reviews that I got back said, to say that Anastasia Lindsey stunned me on the first page is an understatement. And that was the result of me being vulnerable. Someone took that courage that I had and they saw that, and I got a positive review for it. So I always tell people, try to see what you're feeling and thinking, and if you have that internal conflict, have a real and honest conversation with you. If I show up and be vulnerable right now, is it going to excel me on my life path journey? Or am I just living in fear right now? So I always want to say to people, you don't have to rush your vulnerability journey, but like ease into it. Do little tasks here and there, and then ultimately you will see that it's safe. And if somebody reacts negatively to your vulnerability, that says a lot about their journey, not yours. You have to focus on what it's doing for you and not the reaction of other people. And if it is very positive, know that you created a lot of movement out there in the world where people can then choose to be vulnerable themselves. So I'm right there in the middle. I never want to force people to be vulnerable, but I encourage them to do as you can. Lean into how you are feeling in that moment before the vulnerable act and see just kind of what's coming up for you. It's always about doing what's best for you internally.
Absolutely, absolutely, Anastasia. And now, talking about your book, Ocean, tell us a bit more about it. You talked about one of the poems. Tell us a bit more about the book. I like the name Ocean. Why did you name it Ocean? And who is this book for? What is this all about?
Yeah, great question. So, this is ocean right here. It's very soothing and calming to look at, almost iridescent, very light pastel blues and purples. It
Wonderful.
really it came down to being intentional with how I wanted to present such a vulnerable book. It's my little book of healing. So, I knew that I needed something very soothing and calming, but something that could also represent emotions. And so, I thought of the ocean, but for many reasons, the ocean can be very healing and therapeutic for people, or it can be something that's fearful, like deep waves or deep waters. And so I was able to take the deep waves and turn it into human emotions and use that analogy and that metaphor that people could connect with water. But at the same time, water is very healing. It's great for our bodies. Our bodies are made up of water. And so I wanted people to connect with water in a beautiful, calm, and peaceful way. So that's kind of how I came up with ocean, just to be able to tie it to the human relations and our emotions, and how, our emotions come in waves. But sometimes we could just be on the beach, we could be on the shore, we could be happy and peaceful and calm, because that is possible. And so I really wanted people to look at all of the elements that come into play with water and with the ocean. And I really wanted to be very metaphorical with my poems and water. And so it's just a little book of healing. You're going to find traumatic moments in that book. I talk about pain and trauma, but I also talk about the restorative nature of love, self love, love for others, and the healing journey. So it's just all encompassing, like the ocean.
Right. So is it a poem book, or is it about your about your life journey?
It's a poetry book, and I did take my life journey and I turned it into poetry. And within the book as well, there's guided meditations, there's journal prompts, there's affirmations. That way, the reader has activities to do if they'd like to take a break from reading poetry, or if it's making them think about their own journey, and that can be a little hard sometimes, that they're not alone. They have activities within the poetry book that help them get in touch with themselves and heal through whatever emotions they're experiencing.
Right, right, Anastasia. And who is this book for? Is it for everyone or only those people who want to go on a healing journey?
I think it's for everyone, more specifically for people who are on their healing journey or looking to start their healing journey. However, I will say it's for people that want to experience love as well, or who are already experiencing love. It could be for anybody, wherever you are in the world, or wherever you are in your healing journey, or if you're already healed. It's just a book that is very reflective, because even if we say that we are healed, there's always something that we can work on with ourselves because we're always growing. So, ocean, like the waves and like ourselves, we are always changing. Our waves are never the same. And so, ocean can be very reflective for anybody just looking for a read to be very calming and soothing, or a nighttime read.
Absolutely, can be very calming and soothing. Now, one last question I want to ask you, Anastasia, is that
Yeah.
in these times of artificial intelligence, when we are talking about how poetry can be healing, in these times of artificial intelligence, a lot of poetry and everything, or all these emotions that we are talking about, are being written by a lot of AI. How do you see that part and the part of healing that you are talking about? Should we embrace it? Should we leave that out purely when we talk of poetry? Or is there a middle ground? How do you see it from the work that you are, wonderful work that you are doing?
Thank you. I think it goes back to people saying that, AI can do anything a human can do except for process emotions. So, yes, like there is AI out there that's writing poems and papers and books, but it's taking out the human element of it. AI will never be able to fully understand the depth of human emotions. I could ask AI to write a poem at any time, but I feel like it would just be simply reading a poem that was written by anything with zero emotion. And so it takes away the human element of it. And it makes me as a poet feel very disconnected from human nature, from the human race, the human collective. And so while I think it has its con or pros, there are cons as well to it. So I always say, if you're looking for like the very essence of human nature, than to just stick with like a poet who is alive and living life, because those experiences are what makes us feel connected. But if you need resources or help with words or understanding literature itself, then AI is a very powerful tool.
Wonderful, well explained. There is
Thank
much
you.
to learn from you, Anastasia, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to learn more from you, about your book, get hold of your book. So, what is the best way for them to do so?
I'm on two different platforms mainly. So Instagram is where I do a lot of my work, and my handle is Anna Marie Poetry. That's ANA Marie MARIE Poetry POETRY. Or I can be found on my website, which is summersolacehealing.com. That's summer like the season, SUMMER, solace, SOLACE, healing, HEALING.com.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.